Hi guys, welcome back to Abundance of Lovely. Abundance is filled to overflowing and lovely is what we are filled with, and that is love. This is going to be another behind the scenes on one of the blog posts that I'm working on. This particular post is not so much about the lovely things in life, it is about sorrow, lamentation, grief, hard seasons where we require long suffering to persevere and to hold on to the hope that we have. So the particular post, it was spurred from an event. I would call this an insomniac episode where I had a sleepless night, and it truly was a night of lamentation. It was a long night. I turned to God in absolute languishing, mourning, groaning, etc. And so this event is an opportunity to reflect on how God comforted me and met me in that moment of lamentation, and also use it as a framework for how we can come to God in times of sorrow, in times of struggling, and how that can be translated into opportunities for comfort, how He meets us there. He never leaves or forsakes us. And so Sleepless Lamentations is me translating a tangible experience and moment of revelation that I had with God into something that I hope blesses you. At the point of that event, I did record a voice recording reflecting on the night and some of the revelations that God gave me during that night and the ways that He comforted me in that lamentation. And so a part of me preparing for this blog was me going back to that voice recording and scribing it. The reason I had to do a voice recording was because I was so delusional after a night of no sleep that I needed to just articulate what I could verbally. Of course, the result of that was something incoherent at best. It was trying to capture the essence of my memories and recollections of the night, but it didn't really have a narrative structure, flow, it wasn't clear. And so a big part of preparing to get this blog ready is going to be bringing some coherence into those revelations and insights that I captured. And so that's going to be the first part. I've chosen the word lamentation because that seemed the most appropriate to the state of my heart that evening and the season of suffering that I have been in. But I did look up lamentation in a biblical sense, and of course the book of Lamentations is the best place to look. And in that particular instance, there's the languishing of God's people. They were expressing deep sorrow and grief at the destruction of Jerusalem. And so that was the expression of lament from God's people towards God and towards their own hearts, and where they knew they had failed Him and they knew that they had grieved God. I think for me, my lamentation can be personal, like individual, or it can be collective. In that instance in Lamentations, it's collective lamentation, all of God's people. But for me, my personal lamentation has been in regards to sorrow and suffering in a season of not understanding the brokenness of this world and the brokenness in myself. It's the lamentation that comes from acknowledging that we are quite fragile, we are feeble as humans, and we are so dependent on God. And so true lamentation, when you see it all throughout the Psalms as well, it is expressing the sorrow to God. It's turning to Him to bring our pleas of mercy and our petitions. It's not lamenting or complaining to someone other than God. That's not true lament. Lament is brought before God. So that is what this blog is all about. It is about bringing the lamentations of our heart to God. And so I hope that in sharing how I lamented, that it might encourage and enable you to also, when you need to lament before God, have a framework for that. Of course, the best framework is the Bible, when we see the psalmists and when we see in Lamentations how they lament, but I wanted to give a modern day reflection on what lamentation looks like. So enjoy. Okay, so it's a few days later and I'm coming back in, and this time I've come in and I am layering emotion. So I'm trying to reflect in my post, not just the revelations that I experienced from this sleepless night. I want you to understand experientially how hard, how rough, how gruesome, how torturous it is to be deprived of sleep. I do actually acknowledge that a lot of us have had, to one degree or another, sleepless, delusional moments in our life, whether it's from jet lag and long flights, or if someone has a baby, keeping up at night. We all are familiar with this level of exhaustion that can overcome the soul, or this desire to fall into slumber, but the mind doesn't let you. What is different about this, because it was based on an event or an insomniac episode, it means that the structure to this is more driven by the sequence of events, the sequence of thoughts and experience. It's not the same structure or framework that I can apply if I am doing more of a thematic post where I'm researching a topic and presenting it back. I have done experiential posts in the past, and truly it is just me recreating or reliving the emotional impact and insights from that event or that experience. So the purpose is different than a thematic blog. The purpose is to help you as a reader have that empathy for someone else's circumstance or someone else's experience. And maybe there's parts of it that's relatable. And if that's the case, then that's amazing, because that's a touch point, that's a heart connection point. But in other instances, it might not be that it's relatable, but it might be something that is foreign to you, and yet you're curious and you have a desire to understand. You have that empathy of wanting to know more about someone else's experience, so that if you yourself ever experience it, or if someone you love experiences it, you are more equipped. That is always my intention when I have done experiential based posts. There's always going to be similarities and common threads to our human experience, and that's what I love to explore. It's not just what are the common questions that we have about life and human experience and faith. It is, what is the common experiences and emotions that we also might face. So I hope that all comes through. We'll see. Last night I just put in the images and it is now live, and what I'm going to do to wrap up is I'm just going to read out a few of my favorite quotes, the takeaways, which usually are in bold in the blog. So I'll take you through a few of those. Hopefully it inspires you to go and read it. If not, this is a good summary. So the first quote is, "In an insomniac state, your sense of time is distorted. Minutes and hours morph. There are no time signatures, no finite measure of beats. In that liminal space, there is an awareness that our lives, like time signatures, are subject to a finite measure of heartbeats." The next one is, "My sleepless lamentation began as the cry of my heart for the unrelenting, ceaseless wakefulness to come to an end." A little bit later I say, "Although I ached to fall into the depths of slumber, I found a beauty to the waking." What is this beauty? That is what you'll have to find out if you read it. The revelation that I had was I had been listening to my body more than I had been listening to him. Fear was authoring my mind, rewiring my thinking. I had given fear authority to rule my mind. In my truth declarations, my heart was drawn further and further away from my fears and closer to the Father's heart. Perhaps we can reframe all of our suffering and pain to be opportunities to see his invisible properties and to see miracles in action. Suffering is what leads to spiritual formation. I allowed him to speak to my heart to minister to me in my hour of need, in the desperation of a dark night. When we remind ourselves of our loving, gracious God, our endless laments and ceaseless prayers are met with the unceasing love and mercy of God. So that's ceaseless praying met with unceasing love. Our suffering has a purpose because his suffering had the ultimate purpose. I'll leave it there because the rest you'll have to read to find out. But thank you so much for watching. If you have, I welcome any feedback, but stay tuned for more behind the scenes on the blog. Until next time.